Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Biographical Encyclopedia, Volume 1, and this article is entitled McLellin, William E. So, William E. McLellin, we are continuing our way through the Quorum of the 12. William E. McLellin, I feel like some of us may have heard of, but maybe not everyone. So, he is actually mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants. He was the guy who claimed that Joseph Smith's prophecies or revelations weren't worded very well, and that he ought to just confine himself to, leading the church and let somebody else write. And so Joseph Smith, challenged him to rewrite one of them, just even the shortest one. He said, start with the shortest one. If you can do a better job, then go ahead. And he absolutely bombed it. It was awful. So, that's what I know about him. As far as personal things about him, I don't know very much, but I'm guessing that he has a decent education, or else he wouldn't have felt himself qualified to rewrite the Revelations, because his command of the English language is better than Joseph Smith's, So I'm guessing he's educated to a certain extent. But that's just a guess, so let's find out a little more about him. Yeah? Oh, and he left the church during the Kirtland period, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know what happened to him after that, so. Alright. McLellin, William E., a member of the Council of the 12 Apostles from 1835 to 1838, was born in Tennessee, probably in the year 1806. Oh, they don't know for sure. He heard the gospel preached by elders Samuel H. Smith and Reynolds Cahoon. Everybody knows Samuel Smith. He was one of the first missionaries, yeah? While they were on their mission to Jackson County, Missouri in the summer of 1831. He wound up his business and followed them to Jackson County. That's a long way from Tennessee just to up and go to Missouri. I didn't realize he was involved in the Missouri Air Branch. Interesting. While on the way, he was baptized and ordained an elder. He visited Kirtland, Ohio in the fall. At his request, Joseph Smith inquired of the Lord concerning him and received a revelation. See Doctrine and Covenants, section 66. Okay, soon after, he and other members began to criticize the language used in some of the revelations. And William E. McLellin writes Joseph Smith as the wisest man in his own estimation, having more learning than sense. I endeavored to write a commandment like unto one of the least of the Lord's, but failed. It was an awful responsibility to write in the name of the Lord. The elders and all present that witnessed this vain attempt of a man to imitate the language of Jesus Christ renewed their faith in the fullness of the gospel and in the truth of the commandments and revelations which the Lord had given to the church through my instrumentality. And the elders signified a willingness to bear testimony of their truth to all the world. In the winter of 1832 to 33, Elder McLellin performed a mission, in company with Elder Parley P. Pratt, through Missouri and into Greene County, Illinois, where they preached with much success. In a revelation given March 8, 1833, the Lord said, I am not well pleased with my servant William E. McLellin. He was one of the corresponding committee in behalf of the saints to confer with the Jackson and Clay County Committee in trying to settle the Missouri difficulties. He was chosen one of the High Council in Clay County, Missouri, July 3, 1834, and on the 9th started in company with the prophet Joseph from Missouri to Kirtland, Ohio. He was chosen as assistant teacher in the School of the Elders in Kirtland during the winter of 1834 to 35. Wonder why. He was chosen one of the 12 apostles at the organization of that quorum and ordained February 15, 1835, under the hands of Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris. I have mentioned this before, but Joseph Smith did not choose the original 12. It was the 3 witnesses. I feel like he didn't want anyone to think that he was being biased towards anyone in particular, and so he allowed the 3 witnesses to choose his 12 apostles. And that could also be why half of them apostatized at some point. But then they also went through a lot of hard times, so to be fair. All right. I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, he was ordained under the hands of Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris, the 3 witnesses. With the Quorum of the 12 in the spring and summer of 1835, he went on a mission to the east and baptized 5. While upon this mission, he wrote a letter to Kirtland, casting censure upon the presidency, for which he was suspended from fellowship, but meeting with the council of the First Presidency upon his return to Kirtland on September 25th, he confessed, was forgiven, and restored to fellowship. He attended the Hebrew school in Kirtland during the winter of 1835-36, and officiated as clerk for the 12. On Friday, May 18th, 1838, he came before a bishop's court in far west Missouri, where he said he had no confidence in the presidency of the church. Okay. Consequently, he had quit praying and keeping the commandments of the Lord, and indulged himself in his sinful lusts. Ooh, like that wording makes me think it was adultery related. But he was even married, I'm not sure. But it sounds like sexual sins. It was from what he had heard that he believed the presidency had got out of the way, and not from anything that he had seen himself. Well, you take things on hearsay, that's stupid. He was cut off from the church for unbelief and apostasy. After his excommunication, he tried to establish a church of his own, really, that he might be the head thereof, but without success. It's interesting, that's the second time, basically, he's felt like he was better than Joseph Smith. I wonder what gave him that impression. I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? He took an active part with the mob in Missouri in robbing and driving the saints. Isn't that great? As soon as somebody leaves the church and then they turn around and work against it. It's awful. At the time Joseph Smith was in prison, he and others robbed Joseph's house and stable of considerable property. Gosh, what a scummy dude. While Joseph was in prison at Richmond, Missouri, Mr. McLellin, who was a large and active man, went to the sheriff and asked for the privilege of flogging the prophet. Permission was granted, of course it was, on condition that Joseph would fight. This is awful. This is, so disgusting. The sheriff made McLellin's earnest request known to Joseph, who consented to fight if his irons were taken off. McLellin then refused to fight unless he could have a club, to which Joseph was perfectly willing, but the sheriff would not allow them to fight on such unequal terms. Gosh, what a flippin' coward. Okay, I'm sorry. I find people cowards if they choose to only fight someone in an unfair fight. Yeah? I consider that very cowardly. Yeah, that's terrible. Horrible dude. Before I kind of felt sort of neutral about him because it was he was kind of arrogant, but other than that, I don't really know much about him. Not only was he arrogant, he was a coward, at the same time. It had these, doing these terrible, horrible, disgusting things. That just, it's so gross. It's so gross. Brother McLellin was a man of superficial education, really, though he had a good flow of language, so he's a little bit linguistically talented, yeah. He adopted the profession of medicine, really. I did not know that he was a doctor. Or was he a doctor? Was he just I don't know. Did he just sell medicine, patent medicine, that kind of thing? He finally, I love that they put in finally in that. He finally died in obscurity at Independence, Missouri. Gosh. Independence, Jackson County, Missouri, April 24th, 1883. See also Millennial Star, volume 26, page 807. Okay. Yeah. Finally, huh? 1883. That's a lot of time to not cover. Yeah? They lost track of him after what? 1840-ish? After he tried to fight Joseph Smith while he was in prison. It's such an unfair fight on so many levels. Because even if Joseph Smith had won, they would have just put him back in prison and he would have been covered in bruises. Instead of just not being covered in bruises in prison, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Alright, let's see what Wikipedia has to say on him. Okay. It's not that short. I mean, it's a little short, but it's not like ridiculously short, so hopefully they'll have some more information then. Yeah? William Earl McLellin. Well, first of all, his middle name was Earl. Yeah? Born January 18th, 1806 to April 24th, 1883, was an early leader in the Latter-day Saint movement. One of the original members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, McLellin later broke with the church founder Joseph Smith. Okay, I just noticed something, and that is that they have a precise date of birth, which they did not have before in the other article. So I'm guessing they found some sort of like paperwork related to his life that showed when he was born. Somebody wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, January 18th, 1806. Before they were like 1806-ish, you know? Which puts him just barely younger than Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was born in December of 1805, and so he was born January 1806, so he's a month younger. But they were pretty close to the same age. All right, biography. McLellin was born on January 18th, 1806 in Smith County, Tennessee, to Charles and Sarah McLellin. His mother was a Cherokee. Really? Huh. Okay, half Native American. Okay, that's interesting. You know, like that colors a lot of things that he did so far, because maybe he's like overcompensating, because a lot of people were very derogatory towards Native American peoples at the time, and if they had called him like a half-breed or, you know, all the horrible things that they said back then, that I sincerely hope people no longer say, but like if they called him that, you know, then maybe he would want to prove that, you know, he was smarter or whatever, since he was raised kind of in the white culture, it sounds like. It doesn't sound like he had a lot of very strong ties to his mother's culture, because they didn't mention it at all until in the other article, at all. So it makes me think that he didn't. Makes me think that he was more concerned with his father's culture, which was, you know, the white Western culture. So, just to throw that out there. But it does color a lot of what he did, why he became so very arrogant, because he was overcompensating for feeling inferior. Yeah? Which shouldn't happen, but it did, especially at the time, and probably still does today to a certain extent. But no, that's really interesting. He married Cynthia Ann in 1829, but she died 2 years later in 1831. Cynthia Ann who? That's not a last name. Interesting. Did they not know her last name? Okay, McLellin then married Emmeline Miller, at least she had a last name, in 1832 in Portage County, Ohio. Okay, they moved to Independence, Missouri that same year. McLellin and Miller were the parents of 6 children, 4 sons and 2 daughters. So there you go, he was married. And had 6 children, yeah? Church service. In 1831, before he married his second wife, in Paris, Illinois, McLellin first had contact with the missionaries of the Church of Christ that Smith founded. He was baptized on August 20th, 1831 by Hiram Smith, and was ordained an elder. During 1831, he traveled with Smith, and the 2 of them preached in Tennessee. Wonder why he did that. Like, I mean, he obviously wasn't called. Was he called? Maybe he was called. It's just so quickly after his baptism that I feel like that's a little bit jumping the gun. On October 25th, 1831, McLellin was called through a revelation Smith said he received. Okay, the tone of this is very skeptical. Okay, like you didn't have to say it that way, you know. Said he received, you know, allegedly. Anyway, okay, I'll start the sentence over, but I don't care for the wording. On October 25th, 1831, McLellin was called through a revelation Smith said he received to serve a mission in the eastern United States with Samuel H. Smith, Joseph's brother. McLellin complained against the call and was instead tasked with traveling south with Luke Johnson in January 1832. Okay, so he kind of rejected that first call, and then he was given a second chance to try again a couple of months later, like he was given a little more time. McLellin was excommunicated for the first time in December of that year, but was restored to full fellowship by 1833. Was he really? I didn't know that. So he was a little bit on and off, he wasn't super faithful the whole time. That year, McLellin served a mission for the church, traveling with Parley P. Pratt to Missouri and Illinois. However, in a revelation given to Joseph Smith on March 8, 1833, it was said that the Lord was not pleased with my servant William E. McLellin. Okay. That was around the time he was restored to fellowship. I find that really interesting. An experienced school teacher and a self-proclaimed physician. Really? Okay, so was he actually educated or not? That's interesting. McLellin taught penmanship in the Kirtland School for Temporal Education in 1834. Okay, I was under the impression that he was assisting the Hebrew teacher or something. Penmanship? Not that impressive. That's something anybody can practice and get good at. That doesn't require education. That doesn't make anyone superior. It makes them relatively artistic, or maybe have very good fine motor skills, but not better than another person. Oh, that's interesting. Penmanship, huh? Self-proclaimed physician. The tone of this article is really interesting. It's very skeptical on all sides. He was also the assistant teacher at the School of the Prophets. Oh, okay. So those were separate things. All right. He served as a member of the church's High Council in Clay County, Missouri, also in 1834, and was chosen and ordained to be one of the church's original 12 apostles on February 15th, 1835 at age 29. Okay. When the Book of Commandments was about to be published, some Latter-day Saints criticized the wording of some of the revelations Smith said he had received. Once again, said he received. According to Smith, the Lord issued a challenge. And once again, the skeptical tone is so interesting. According to Smith, the Lord issued a challenge to see if the wisest member of the church could write a revelation comparable to the least of Smith's revelations. If they could, then the members of the church would be justified in claiming that the revelations did not come from God. McLellin, who was trained as a school teacher, was he though? I don't know. Worked as a school teacher, I guess, was selected by the critics for the challenge. According to Smith's history, McLellin failed to produce a credible text, and the controversy died away. McLellin was appointed to be a captain in the Missouri State Militia in 1837. Okay. Interesting. Disassociation with the church. McLellin's association with the Latter-day Saint Church came to an abrupt halt in 1838, when he declared that he had no confidence in the presidency of the church. This may have been due to the mismanagement of the church's financial situation, the Kirtland Safety Society. A lot of people were bothered by that, yeah. McLellin was excommunicated on May 11, 1838, and subsequently actively worked against the Latter-day Saints, becoming involved with Missouri mobs. According to members of the church, McLellin ransacked and robbed Smith's home and stable while Smith was being held in jail, pending charges on the Safety Society's financial problems. No charges were ever filed against Smith or against McLellin. If no charges were filed against Joseph Smith, then he wouldn't have been in jail. And the fact that he was in jail means that there had been charges filed. Somebody disappeared them, it sounds like. But once again, the skeptical tone. According to members of the church, this and this happened. It sounds fairly likely at this point. I don't know. A history published in the Latter-day Saint periodical Millennial Star in 1864 related the incident. While Joseph was in prison at Richmond, Missouri, Mr. McLellin, who was a large and active man, went to the sheriff and asked for the privilege of flogging the prophet. Permission was granted on condition that Joseph would fight. The sheriff made McLellin's earnest request known to Joseph, who consented to fight, as if his irons were taken off. McLellin then refused to fight unless he could have a club, to which Joseph was perfectly willing, but the sheriff would not allow them to fight on such unequal terms. So, that's basically almost pretty much word for word what we just read about. I think that's a weird story, though, not gonna lie. Previous to that incident, Smith authored a letter to the church from Liberty Jail on December 16, 1838, in which he made allusions to actions by McLellin as he vilified as sins. In that letter, Smith likened McLellin to the biblical magician Balaam, whose ass refused to help Balaam curse the Israelites in the era of Moses. The letter may have been what provoked McLellin to attempt to fistfight Smith. Okay, Okay, then that makes a little more sense. So he felt like he was being maligned. Is that libel when you write it down? I think it's libel. Slander is when you speak it, right? I think that's right. Yeah, okay. But, like, there's no reason to hurt somebody physically. Just saying. After Smith's death in 1844, McLellin first accepted the succession claims of Sidney Rigdon and was appointed one of the 12 apostles in Rigdon's organization on April 8, 1845. They didn't mention this at all. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. In 1847, at Kirtland, Ohio, he joined with several others to create a reorganization of the church, designated the Church of Christ. A lot of churches were called that. McLellin called on David Whitmer to assume the presidency, claiming that Whitmer had been ordained by Smith as his successor on July 8, 1834. And it's interesting, like, suspiciously specific. This organization was short-lived. McLellin that later associated with churches led by George M. Hinkle, James J. Strang, and Granville Hedrick? That's interesting. He's basically going on all the split-off groups. I'm actually not familiar with Granville Hedrick. He was a leader in the Latter-day Saint movement after the 1844 succession crisis. 1863, Hedrick became the founding leader of the Church of Christ, which is one of the many... Okay, so he's just another one. That's interesting. So he's like all of them except that one. Gosh. Well, the thing is, he'd already been rejected by the church itself, yeah? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so, like, and that he went around to all of the other ones and, like, joined their little split-off groups. It's interesting. By 1869, McLellin had broken completely with all organized religion, though he expressed a firm belief in the Book of Mormon in 1880. I have set to my seal that the Book of Mormon is a true divine record, and it will require more evidence than I have ever seen to shake me relative to its purity. When a man goes at the Book of Mormon, he touches the apple of my eye. He fights against truth, against purity, against light, against the purest, and one of the truest, purest books on the earth. Fight the wrongs of LDSism, as much as you please, but let that unique and inimitable book alone. McLellin died on April 24th, 1883 in Independence, Missouri. Wow! That's really interesting. I'm slightly taken aback. It does surprise me a little bit that he had such a strong testimony of the Book of Mormon for so long and yet rejected the church itself. That's not super common. Very interesting. Personal writings. McLellin kept journals and notebooks during and after his time in the Latter-day Saint Church. Because he was a prominent insider in the early church, these were of great interest to the Latter-day Saint historians, okay? In the early 1980s, collector Mark Hoffman claimed to have obtained the McLellin collection, which he described as embarrassing to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church. This generated interest that allowed Hoffman to sell it to 2 simultaneous buyers before being exposed as a counterfeiter when he killed 2 people to cover his crimes. Oh my gosh. Like, this isn't about him, but, like, about William E. McLellin, but that's crazy. In the aftermath of these crimes, the LDS Church discovered McLellin's writings were already in the church's possession, having been acquired and forgotten in 1908. These were later published in 2 works, the Journals of William E. McLellin, 1831-1836, edited by Jan Ships and John W. Welsh in 1994, and the William E. McLellin Papers, 1854-1880, edited by Stan Larson and Samuel J. Passy in 2007. However, these collections were missing a notebook because of photographs in a 1920s newspaper published by the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In January 2009, the notebook was located and acquired by Brent Ashworth, one of the original collectors interested in Hoffman's supposed McLellin collection. So the church owns all but one? I'm sure it's not that big a deal. It sounds like they have quite a few. Yeah, it's all good. Like, I don't think it's that big a deal. That is interesting, though. Wow. So he kept diaries, and that's how we know so much about what happened to him. I haven't read his diary, obviously. I do find that really interesting. So if you are interested in learning more about this person, please go ahead, check it out. It looks like they have been digitized. There's some links in here on a couple of books, like the William E. McLellin papers. But there's also a website, it looks like, on Signature Books. Okay, so these were published relatively recently, so they're probably not available online, but I'm not sure. Oh, they used the article we just read as one of their references. That's interesting. Not all of our articles that we read are like that, but yeah, I find that really fascinating. Okay, William E. McLellin, disgusting person. It's like he had this idea of what was the truth, in quotes, without actually being open to the possibility of it not being true. And I also find that he had a really strong testimony of the Book of Mormon, and also being 50% Native American. I find that really interesting. I wondered if he felt more attached to it because it was an account of basically his like long lost ancestors. I mean, in a sense, I guess. Not direct, maybe, but that is really interesting. Or I don't know, like, I find that really interesting. But, you know, at the same time, the Book of Mormon was one of the first histories, I mean, it's, you know, history in a sense, of the American continent that put Native Americans in a positive light. So maybe that was what drew him to it. I don't know. That's really interesting. Huh. He sounds really arrogant. and like very unjustifiably arrogant, yeah? Where he's actually just kind of this random dude. He must have had a pretty strong, like, presence, you know, when he was around other people. Otherwise, why would they keep calling him to leadership? Yeah? Like he was in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then again in Sidney Rigdon's like little spin-off group, and yeah, and then he kept switching groups, and then they're like, nope, you're not a leader, it's fine. Wow, that's really interesting. Huh. I find it a little too bad that he was so vindictive and he was such a flippin' coward. Like, it just, a lot of his behavior was really disgusting. So I don't think that, like, weighing someone in the balance, I find that most of his actions were negative. Like, I don't see a whole lot of positive that he did. I really don't. I mean, can you even name, like, 2 things that he did that was good? I mean, I can't. He taught penmanship, I guess. Zippity-doo-dah. Anyway, yeah, I don't have a lot of respect for this person. I think that he had some issues. He had some issues. And I really don't like that he took out so many of his issues on the church itself, or on Joseph Smith as the leader of the church. That's so weird. Anyway, so, William E. McLellin, I did learn a lot today, and if you did at least enjoy the video, whether or not you enjoyed the subject, it was a different matter, but if you enjoyed listening to me talk about William E. McLellin, please consider giving the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.